or case study last time. Now, actually, before I do that, Kathy, I just want to mention we did get a question come in around one of the quiz questions, which people weren't too happy with. And so the question was something like safe system audits are a good way to prioritize projects. And one of the answers was yes, because of the safe system assessment component of it. And then one of the participants pointed out a slide that said, hang on, you've got a slide here that says it's not a good way of prioritizing projects, but the little specificness here is that road safety audits, and that was the title of that slide, road safety audits are not a good way to prioritize, projects. However, like a safe system assessment is a good way, and the safe system assessment component of a safe system audit is makes it a good way. So I thought, well, I didn't really explain that in detail in the session. You'd have to have a pretty keen eye to pick up that the title of that slide was road safety audit is not a good way. So we gave that person the points. So we'll take on that sort of feedback at any time. Okay, so here's an intersection, as you can see, and this is the priority road here, a high-speed road, and I've got give way here and an unsealed road over this side. And there's a project proposal to seal this road and put some curb and channel at the intersection and clean things up a bit. So let's have a look at that. That's how it's going to look. Now, I want you as a auditor to tell me, what crashes do you think will occur in significantly more amounts after they do this upgrade? So, without knowing too much about this, what are the crashes and why do you think they might occur? I see what people are saying. Okay, we've got side impact over to give way. This is good. And that's right. Yeah, so Will and Chris, I think, are going to get prizes there for sort of talking a little bit about the see-through effect and overshooting. So Ben came in a little bit later, and I'll let Kathy work out this. Sorry, got a bit of hay fever this morning. Okay. So that's the new bit of road. You can see it's got nice curving. I think I may sneeze a lot during this session. Here's from the old bit, and you can see the see-through effect there. So the change in the surface was quite pronounced beforehand, and then the sealing of it just made it all, look like it continues to go through. We've got the run of power poles, we've got the trees, we've got the straight alignment. Now, funnily enough, or not funnily enough, very tragically, this project did not receive a road safety audit. It didn't receive a road safety audit because, well, probably a number of reasons. But one was that they said, well, we're just upgrading this. It's going to be better. We're following all the standards and guidelines, and it's going to absolutely improve things. So this is an example of where even if you're upgrading, you really need to ensure that we do those. So there was a significant increase in death and serious injury. Okay, there was a bit of increased volume at this location, but the crashes really did come from the direction over here, and we had quite a lot of our community killed and seriously injured as a result of this. Now, if we could have intervened as auditors or provided our input, there are lots and lots of things that could have been done to lessen that. I mean, a roundabout obviously would have been a lovely ultimate solution, but even if we couldn't do that, I'll let you maybe pop in some ideas on what you think could have been done while I have another sneeze. Okay, so seeing some great ideas here. Lots of people want to stagger the intersection, and that's a really good one. Or yeah, offset stagger, and that would really eliminate that see-through effect. So that's good. You're still left with high speed side impact crash possibility, but you really lessen that see-through effect. Splitter islands, I really like that one too. Kathy, I'll let you work out who said that because my computer won't show me who that is. But yes, splitter islands. Just having a look at some of the others here. Well, grade separation would be lovely. I suppose often as a road safety auditor, you know, you are going to look at an area like this, and at some point, you like, well, we're not as auditors constrained by costs and those sort of things. I personally, if I was auditing that, it'd be very unlikely I would say grade separation as a recommendation, even though it would be a great safety outcome. It's just so far out of the realm of what could usually be built with the dollars allowable. And I suppose I've got the luxury of knowing a little bit about those roads and the volumes and the whole wider strategic context of that, but it just wouldn't, it's just not going to get grade separated, just due to the cost. Okay, a RIOS, a rural intersection activated warning sign or a rural intersection activated speed is a good one. Okay, so that's where you actually put a speed limit on these on the main road, and it's activated by a car coming in from the side. So that's an interesting one as well. So somebody's just asked to recap the see-through effect, which is fair enough. So the see-through effect, or is what I would call visual deceit, is simply that a driver approaching here, some drivers, most drivers will see that they have to stop, but some drivers will be sort of focused off in the distance, maybe be very tired, it might be foggy, well, actually foggy is probably not that bad, but it may be, you know, they're not really concentrating or the like, and they just shoot straight through. They completely miss that whole thing that they have to stop because of that straight alignment. So some really good answers there, and you can see that as auditors, we have lots of treatments we can suggest, and there's a little bit of a skill and an art in being able to just adjust and pick the right ones for that circumstance. Now, Sean's put in there that New Zealand yellow stop lines will be used to stand out more. And yeah, that's a good point, but there's plenty of see-through effect, death and serious injury going on in New Zealand. So yeah, that's just to demonstrate that the geometry, the actual geometry of the road is far, far, far more influential than any sign or line that you can put up. You need to do some pretty significant physical stuff to disrupt a driver. But yeah, no, it's yeah, as Sean's rightly said there, it's a sort of supplementary supplementary run. But I really always warn road safety auditors that if we get all the signs and lines absolutely 100% correct across New Zealand, we'll have a small reduction in the number of people killed and seriously injured. There is certainly a good. No, I mean, I'm not saying absolutely minuscule. There is stuff there, but substantively, we are not going to address death and serious injury with signs and lines. They are exactly as Sean said. They are supplementary. Okay, let's get back into it. So I wanted to just mention, well, last session we had it was really good. We talked about, what a road safety audit is, a bit about a safe system, and about how to write up an audit finding, and that formula that we use. And now we're going to go into the types of road safety audit. That'll be fairly brief, because we can audit at different stages of a project. So we really think about, okay, a project's got pre-construction, so that's when you're doing all the designs. You're doing concept designs, preliminary designs, detailed designs. Then it's being built, and there are different road safety sort of views and audits and things that go on during roadworks, and it's slightly outside what is formalised in what CAHI guidelines around road safety auditing or safe system auditing for the roadwork stuff, but it's a process that is sort of often used as well. And then we have post-construction. So just as it's finished, whether it's a road that's not open yet, somebody can look at it, or it's just opened up and you can look at that. So these early stage concept, or sometimes called feasibility stage audits, is where you get like very high level plans. It's sometimes called the planning audit, and you're looking at these big picture things. What's the alignment of the road? What's the intersection form, the interchange form? How are people from one area up the top going to get to there? How are people from up here going to get down to here now? Is that going to cause issues? It's pretty big sort of planning level stuff. Then the next stage of audit might happen when there's a bit more meat on the bone of a design, and you can start looking at some of the layouts, maybe on a survey base or an aerial base. And then you get into the detailed design, and that's where you get the full design set. So you get long sections, cross sections. So you've got the full geometric design, you'll get pavement design, lighting design, signs, markings, drainage. There's a lot of documentation you'll get at this stage of auditing. And it's important at this stage of auditing, if you're not somebody who can look at those sorts of plans and understand what is going to be built and imagine challenges and issues associated with that, that you are part of a team that has people that can do that. It doesn't mean you can't add value to these sorts of projects, but just be aware of the importance of that. And so, yeah, as I said, you get a whole lot of different plans that will come, signal phasing and signal plans and lighting and all sorts of good stuff. Construction stage, as I mentioned, New Zealand looks at this slightly differently. So I encourage you to be very across what is done during construction and checking the layout of a traffic management scheme. But the audit process can be used, but it's far, far more than just checking conformance with standards and the code of practice, where signs should be set out and taper lengths and those sort of things. It's a fundamental look at the safety implications of a construction site. So things that aren't picked up in standards or guidelines, like if there was a KFC on this corner and people are here, they will get to their KFC one way or another. They want their chicken, right? So we can't just say, oh, well, we've met all the code by blocking this off and blocking this off. We've got to think about some access across to how are we reasonably going to get people across to this or down this road. Are you going to divert people through high pedestrian areas, school areas? How's that all going to play out? So it's bigger than just where's the sign and the line. The pre-opening is where the ribbon hasn't been cut, like this road. The ribbon hasn't been cut on this big new road. You can see there's a bus sort of driving down the wrong carriageway. That's an indication it's not open. Hopefully, it isn't open. And you're checking things like, did they get the correct coloured RRPMs in the correct spot? Have they got the guidepost the right way around? Did the overlap of the barrier rails, is that correct? Have they got the right delineators on there? Is the right height of the barrier? Is the lines and signs correct? You're just doing that final check of everything to make sure it's all good. So here we go. Let's get you involved. They're just opening this road. So this is what sort of post-opening, but sometimes these brownfield sites, you can't be there before they cut a ribbon because there's no ribbon to cut and there's no anything you can see as an issue there if you were doing I'll call this a post-opening audit. So they've done some works and it's just finished, and so road markings are wrong. Left turn, oh gee, Kathy, this is a good group and it goes very quickly as to people putting it in there. I think we're going to give it to Chris on that one. Will and Chris again. And somebody's asking what image is currently up. Well, it's a bit of Auckland, and it's got a left turn and straight on the left lane, and it's got a left turn and straight on the right lane, or the middle lane, sorry. And so, yes, you can see the conflict. Now, unfortunately, unfortunately, we do see a bit of this sort of stuff happen. And we are one of the ways that should be stopping this. I'm not saying we're the only one. I'm saying whoever was the site person should have picked this up, and whoever was the client supervisor should have picked this up. And there's a lot of people who should have been, the line marker themselves should have picked this up. But sometimes they slip through, and we're another net to try to catch this sort of stuff. The public is a pretty good net to catch this, unfortunately, and most of the time they let you know before any crashes happen, or they're minor sort of crashes that happen. But occasionally there's some pretty bad ones. So then I think it was rectified. So I mentioned thematic road safety audits. This is sort of cycling, walking, or motorcycling. You really just put yourself in the shoes of that particular road user to get that very sort of in-depth user experience. So as I say, most road safety auditors will walk a site anyway, sometimes for occupational health and safety reasons, like a motorway. Sometimes that audit is not done by walking it. Sometimes it is. Sometimes you get traffic management, you close down parts of the motorway, you do your audit, but a lot of the time you will drive through that one. But pretty much for most other things, you will be walking it anyway, so you'll get that walking perspective. But sometimes you might decide to ride your bike through, even though it's not a specific thematic road safety audit, because a normal road safety audit, we are thinking about everybody. And motorcycle is probably the one that they're not many road safety auditors are also licensed motorcycle riders. And so you usually find yourself a rider who will ride and talk to you. But I'll explain that a bit more later. Okay, any questions at this stage before I jump into a little bit more content? We do have our usual break coming up, which I would have used for all my sneezing, but I've got that out of the way, it looks like. Okay, Kathy, will you just jump in if anybody comes up with anything? But I'm going to talk now. So I was just talking there about the different sort of types of road safety audit and the stages within a project you could get audits done. Now I want to talk about the individual steps of a road safety audit or a safe system audit. So there, I've sort of aligned those. And there's 13 steps in a road safety audit / safe system audit in New Zealand. And I'm going to sort of lay these out for you. They are a fairly easy, straightforward process to follow. There's a little bit more complexity because of this safe system audit, but it's not too bad. The whole thing does take time, though. It does add value to a project, and really we do need to see it as an integral part of any design process. So, yeah, I showed that example of the sealing of that road where the engineers and the designers really just felt that they were improving the whole transport system and again making everything better. But by those actions of that change in the road, we saw a significant step up in death and serious injury, which is just absolutely unacceptable. Now, this is I talked a little bit about signs and lines not being the be all and end all, but here's an interesting one. Does anybody have any ideas on what might be a little bit wrong with that sign? And I'll come back to that. I'll let you have a ponder of that. I will come back to it, I promise. Okay. So here are the steps straight out of the Wakahi Safe System Audit guidelines. You can see the 13 steps there. So we see we've got starting stuff and the team selected. There's a bit of a briefing, commencement meeting, review of the documents, then a site inspection, and we always do our site inspection, debrief meeting, and this is a uniquely New Zealand thing, this idea of a debrief meeting before the report is handed over. Usually the audit team will complete their audit, hand it over, and then there's a possibility for a meeting. But in New Zealand, there's the encouragement or within this process to have that debrief meeting, number 7 here, where the audit team will discuss their findings and get sort of some feedback and commentary from the project team and the designer so their report can be more useful to that team. Now, I think there's great advantages to that. Some people get a bit concerned about, are we starting to lose independence by that? But I think it's not too bad. There's a report written and there is an absolutely stock standard template that you write your reports in. So everybody's writing the same, at least the same, has the same sections of a report. The designer and the project manager, they get that, they look at it, they make all these determinations of whether they can or can't do these things, and they can fix things one way or another. And then there's the opportunity for a road safety engineer from that road authority to get involved and to make commentary around those, and we see then the decisions are made on what will and won't be done, number 11, and the finalization and documentation of that report, and then implementing those changes as agreed. So, and there's quite a process there. I'll sort of step you through some of the key ones in here. Now, this is a bit of a one, in theory, you follow every one of these steps in this full audit process. And generally you do most of them. Occasionally for smaller audits, some of them are maybe an email or a quick phone conversation rather than a sort of formalized, 1 hour, 2 hour Teams meeting. But for a decent sized project, you go through all of these steps. I will come back to that, Simon, if the prize out there. Kathy, you can have a look to see who's getting that prize. Okay, key audits. So you select this audit team, and you would have somebody leads the audit, and they are to be somebody who is very experienced, and they have 10 years of road safety, safe system, road design style experience according to the Wakahi guidelines, and they're really leading the whole process. And they get road safety auditors, which you will be after you successfully complete this course, or safe system auditors, and they are part of the team. And it's absolutely expected that you're not going to come out of this course and be somebody who is high in knowledge around how to do audits and all these specifics. You're going to build that over time, and by the process of building these teams with an experienced person, you get mentored along, and you will start to really refine your auditing process and pick up a lot more things, and then you'll sort of progress up to that lead auditor. You might have been in the industry for quite a while, and it won't take you too long. You'll do some audits, you'll get your head around the process, you've got a good background and knowledge. You see, you'll be understanding how to report things and how to deal with issues, and you'll be able to, step up to that lead role quickly. If you're very new to this whole industry, and it might take you a bit of time to gather up knowledge and information, you'll continually be that road safety auditor, and then over time you will be able to step up to that lead role. Then you can have others come along, be observers or trainees. So observers could be anybody from the principal of local school who comes in and gives you a bit of advice and then tells you how things are going. They may be listed in the audit, not as an official auditor, but just as we call it an observer. We could have said like a person who gives some sort of input. Or sometimes it's a specialist, like okay, maybe you do have one barrier in the job, and you don't really know about barriers, but you just want advice on that one barrier, and you get some advice from one particular barrier expert or the like, and you might list them as an observer or observer/specialist. And a trainee we really talk about is somebody who's getting involved in this process but hasn't done the formalized training. So the client appoints the team, and we really want everybody to understand this whole process. Okay. There's often a question, well, can you do a one-person audit? The answer is pretty much no, but in very rare circumstances, it may be okay, very small projects, low volume roads, but it's really quite discouraged. You want some sort of team to do an audit. We need to make sure everybody's independent. We talked about that last session in a lot of detail. Only experienced auditor should lead the audit team, and they talk about ensuring that they have safe system experience, so they really understand the fundamentals of the safe system and safe system principles in order to be able to do that. Ideally, that team we talk about has this broad, range of skills and ages, and males and females and others, and empathy with it. Like, you want this really rich, diverse team. This was one interestingly, that I put together, and the team was us three. We're all male. We're all about the same age. We all worked in road authority, like state road authority, for a long time. That's how we all know each other. We kind of see the road the same. So we asked Wendy to come along and be part of this audit team, because she gave a very different perspective. She's not an engineer. She's she's a scooter rider, female, a bit older than us, and just questioned a lot of things and gave us a different view of the whole thing, which was good. A lot of the time, to be honest, you don't have the luxury of, being able to find this, all these people and bring everybody together. You're on a timeline. You've got to do this audit. You grab the people that you have available to you. You try to ensure that, okay, this one's got lots of barriers and I'm not a barrier person. Okay, we better get Fred, who's the barrier guru, to come in and be part of this audit team. Or, oh, this one looks like it's got a lot of drainage stuff going on. Let's get Jess in. She's a drainage person. Yeah, so build that team around the skills and knowledge that you have. Hand over the brief. So the client's got to write, here's what we want. Here's all the information we've got. This is the stage of the project. This is why we're doing it. Some sort of commencement meeting where you all discuss that information and make sure you've got everything you need to be able to do that audit. Ask any questions. Look at that background information, and then you inspect the site during the day and the night. Okay, we go out there in the day and the night. Why do we go out at night? Well, there's a number of reasons. One is sort of things that obviously you're not going to pick up during the night that you do during the day. Like here, we can see which direction North Croydon is, and there you can't at night. Now, those sort of things are obvious, but sometimes in an audit, we find that at night, the lights present some sort of visual deceit. Sometimes I'll be looking at a road, for example, a new alignment of a road, and be out there, and that road's not built, so you're standing in, existing areas, and you think, oh, okay, the road's going to come around there. That's interesting. And at night, you sort of think, oh, wow, I can really see how the headlights are going to glare into existing drivers at that point. And so it really can highlight some of the things at night. Also, yeah, you'll just maybe see different land use happen at night. There could be sort of nightclub areas that you're not quite aware of, and different things. So you go out there at night as well. Now, Kathy, did we see anybody come up with an answer to this?
Absolutely. Straight onto it, Ben. Anti-clockwise roundabout circulation. Which side of the road do we drive again?
Yes, correct. That is right. We certainly don't drive that way. Do we have a gap in New Zealand in roundabout signs? The answer is yes. I hope somebody said yes. Yes. Josh can have a prize as well for answering my somewhat my question there. So yeah, New Zealand does have a gap, and that's not where the gap goes. The gap goes on that side. And why is the gap on that side? Well, it's just to remind people very subtly that we drive clockwise around roundabouts. And now, this is a funny one. Like, first of all, I'd be interested, and you don't need to answer this one in the chat, but just how many people have never noticed that there's a gap in a roundabout sign and have probably driven past 10,000 of them in their lifetime and just never actually noticed that? And that shows you there's a lot of subtlety in our signage and line marking of a road network, and even our geometric design, there's a lot of subtlety in. And we as auditors need to be a little bit more aware of what sort of specifics are going on. Second one is like, is this going to cause an issue? Like, is that sign going to cause all sorts of death and serious injury on the New Zealand road network? No, it's not. But it's wrong, so it should be fixed. And there are areas where it's a little bit more risky, a little bit more risky. I'm still not going to call it high risk or intolerable risk, but I'm just saying it's a little bit more risky. And it is around airports, around tourist areas. Why is that? Because, well, here's one out of Hobart, because this is a very vivid example for me. You pick up your rental car from Hobart International Airport, and this is the first intersection you get to. Okay, so you just got to think, well, there's probably people coming in from countries that drive on the right-hand side of the road, that don't have roundabouts, don't really know how to use roundabouts. And this is going to be just a bit more risky for them. Okay? The reality is most of them will just follow the cars in front of them and they'll, work it through, and it's all going to be fairly low speed. But the context and the situation is how you are starting to build up that profile of risk. You'll remember when we have the formula for how to write up the finding, we talk about the issue, and then we talk about the crash. We talk about factors that increase or decrease risk. That's the context. And this, it's say, okay, this is out of an airport, it's more likely to have these, so there's more of a risk. Kathy, were there any other questions I needed to deal with?
Yeah, there was a question, Ken, about does it mean the report, the road safety audit report, will be a live document for some time from stage 8 because of the interaction, because you're looking for the team's response?
Yeah, yeah, that's right. So the report itself, yeah, okay, this is the New Zealand process. Is you'll have all this interaction with the team, getting your head around this project, and you might have sessions like this one here where you're standing around a big plot and you're looking at it. Oh, what are you doing? How are you doing this? Tell us about this. What's going on here? What's the land use out here? You made any commitments? Gathering all this, right? You grab all of that, and then you go off as an audit team. You're independent from the client, leave them there. You pour through their designs. You get out on site, you look at it, daytime, nighttime inspection. You sit around your office debating, is that going to be an issue? Does anybody know anything about this? Can we find any research on that? Building this report and findings. Then you're going to go back though, and you're going to have this meeting with your client. So your report's not finished, but you'll talk them through it. So it is live really at this stage. And then they might say, well, actually, you're putting that in, but we're not going to, we're not going to be doing that, what you say is an issue. Now, I would always say to them, oh, okay, can you give me some documentation of that? Just so, we're clear that our report is going to actually reflect what's going on. It's not just, and the reason I say that is because, they might say, oh, no, we're going to make it fully controlled right turns. And then, that's forgotten from that conversation, and all of a sudden you've not put it in as an issue in your report, and it doesn't get built, and then the questions are asked of you. Why didn't you make comment on that? The answer is you say, well, I didn't make comment because here's the email or the design that has a fully controlled right turn. They said it was happening. It's but then, you have this debate and you change it, and then you hand it over. And that actually, at that point, as an auditor, your job is done, the document is closed. Now, the client who's received this report, they still have it as a bit of a live document. You've done your job as the audit team, but they still have it. They can't change your findings at that point or the risks. That's all locked in. It's just all about for them to respond. How are they going to respond to all of these things? So good question. Thank you for that. Anything else, Kathy?
Yes, one more question about, is a night visit required for every stage?
Okay, so for a feasibility stage road safety audit, you can technically in Austroads, you don't need to do a site inspection if your client doesn't request it. That is so rare. I can't even tell you how rare it is. It's literally building if you're building a road through a paddock or something, and that's just the first stage. Even at the detailed design, you go to site. The nighttime again has a little bit of flexibility, but it's going to be on your client to decide that. It's not your decision. If they just ask you to do an audit in conformance with Austroads and Wakaka, you get out there on site. But it does say in there the client may elect to not include a nighttime inspection, but it is discouraged. Hope that makes sense.
And this is an interesting question. I mean, they're all obviously terrific and interesting questions. But what if the client thinks that the audit team has missed something?
Yep. So they are absolutely within their right to then say, did you consider this? And okay, auditors are only human and audit teams only human. They may have missed it, and they may go, thank you, we'll take that back and adjust our audit report to include that. Thank you for highlighting it. They may say, yep, no, we thought about it, we talked about it, and we didn't put it in our report because we don't believe it's an issue. That's fine too. But you can certainly have that conversation and flag those things with them. But the one thing you really don't want to be getting into if you're a client or receiver of an audit report is to tell them to change things, to remove things or the like. If they've come up with that in their independent finding and it's been well thought through by them and documented, you can't be pressuring them to change it. There could be very hefty legal implications if you were to say something like, we're not going to pay you unless you remove that finding. That would be very, very bad.
Naughty. What about, have you been asked to rescore once the project safety team has replied and outlined changes they will make?
Yes. Yep. So that's a little bit more in the safe system assessment end, but it sometimes happens in a road safety audit. So what would happen is, okay, let's take this one we've got here. Mark laying out a roundabout plan here, and they go, all right, this is what we're planning to do, and we go off as an audit team and we look at it and we come back and we say, okay, you don't have enough deflection on this approach. We're worried about this entering speed of vehicles. So, we suggest reverse curves on this approach. And we've rated that high risk, for example. They may go, okay, we're adjusting that design. There's a new design. It's got reverse curves. Can you tell us, what the risk is now? And we could go back, and I would just add an extra column into this or an extra supplementary bit of information and say, this is the new thing, and the risk has gone to low. If you're doing safe system assessment scoring, you may actually rescore that and give a new score. Now, obviously, there's more work involved in that, so make sure your client either at the start, if you're going to be doing that sort of stuff, you account for it in your quotes and the like, or if it's a reasonable sort of variation or an extra bit of time in that. Okay, there's a bit of information there about why that debrief meeting happens, and remember that's before the report's handed over, so you can discuss reasoning behind the concerns. You can even talk about solutions and what could work, what couldn't work, resolve any misunderstandings or factual errors. So the report I mentioned, and you'll be using this, the Safe System Audit Report, the Wakatahi template, you'll be using that later in this course. And you put, just follow what's in there and it will conform. You're allowed to, put your own logo on it and change the colors and those sort of things, but just follow the headings and the sections. And those are sort of listed there. So the meeting, there's this completion meeting and everything's finalized. That often the completion meeting is just a phone call because you've had your debrief and you go, yep, updated all of that. You email it over, give them a call. All right, it's there. Have a read of it. Let me know if you've got any questions. On a big, massive project, there might be another meeting, another sit-down presentation of the final report. And then it's over to the client team, the designers and the road safety engineers in there to make their decisions. And they finalise that report and agree on actions internally. Don't need to give that back to the audit team. It's nice if you do. We like as auditors to see the final thing. What did they actually agree on? What did they end up doing? But that's not absolutely required, but we need to implement. Now, when we get a risk rating in an audit, as we saw earlier, the risk ratings come out as serious, significant, moderate, minor. And I did actually, it's funny the things you sort of wake up at 2 in the morning thinking about. The person who said that those are the wrong way around, I was just like, yeah, I reckon they are. Just the terminology of it. So, yeah, significant versus serious. It's not the way we did it in Australia, and I wasn't involved in the naming of these ones, but yeah, maybe could be altered. So thank you to whoever said that. I've forgotten who it was. But that's the way it is, and that's the way you've got to use it, unless they change it at some point. But this is what's out of the Walking Day document. It says, okay, if the risk comes out as serious, it must be addressed and requires changes that avoid serious safety consequences. Significant should be addressed. Moderate plans that should be addressed to just improve safety. Mind you, you can't get a moderate without it being under the death and serious injury threshold, and minor could be addressed. There's just a little bit of help for those receiving the report. Okay, the audit report's handed over to that project manager. Everybody should keep file copies. Got to respond in writing to the recommendations internally and keep a record of that. And it really has to be done. Very concerning if audits are done and just put in a shelf and never actually actioned and looked at. Yeah, just be aware those responses, even though it's an internal response, they could become public with freedom of information requests and the like. It's good practice to give response to the audit team, but not required. Okay, just a reminder here that if you receive a road safety audit report, its whole purpose is to help you reduce risk of that project, but it is your project and you decide what happens and what doesn't happen. The auditors have no legislative power. They cannot require you to do anything. They're providing you with an advice piece. That is it. But that being said, if you're going to not do something or not address an action, justify that. Put in a reasonable response. So if you get pulled into court to justify that, you go, well, this is why we didn't do anything. Okay, Kathy, questions before I look to jump to talking about one particular road use. In fact, we'll probably take our break after I answer any questions.
No, we're looking good for questions at the moment.
Okay, let's take 5 minutes now, and then we'll come back into it. So 5 minutes back, and we're going to talk about pedestrians, one of my favorite topics. I'm going to get back into it. I was just just reading, catching up on stuff. Kathy, you might need to fill me in if I missed anything. The one about if say you're doing a design stage audit and you see existing problems, those are best just to email through to that road authority and get it logged straight away. I mean, if you're looking at the design of a roundabout and there's in this case, a stop sign that's missing or damaged or something like that, it'd be years before anything is done associated with the road safety audit report often. So get that alerted to the road authority ASAP. Okay. Pedestrians. Oh,
Sorry.
Kathy. Yeah.
Sorry, Ken. Okay. So I've seen safe system audits with comments as issues where they are small things, not necessarily a safety issue. Are these okay to include, or should only the safety issues be identified? I think you talked about that in the first session.
Yeah. If you can't direct it to a crash, like if you are in that formula struggling to write what crash this is going to cause, what crash, and tell me the crash type, it's not a road safety audit issue. There's a few ways that I would address this as an auditor. Well, there are issues that I see that are not substantial enough to make the audit report. Okay. Now, these could be safety related issues, but you just go, it's so minor, like you'd have to fabricate this such a long bow of a scenario to ever see this result in a crash of any sort of substance, that you're just going to clutter your audit report with very minor little things. Now, your choice there is to just completely ignore it and say, no, the audit's for things that meet into this risk register. That's it. The other would be to put an appendix on and say minor issues we identified and just go ... Hundreds of things sometimes, right? But you fix all of those 100 things and you just take a smidgen of risk off the project. Or the other is to do a completely separate memo. So those would be things that you can kind of try to link to safety, but are really struggling. There are ones that are absolutely not. Like I've got a designer that I audit with a lot, and he's very, very particular about how designs are presented. And he looks at a design and he gets really frustrated about the use of, the wrong color for a service or this or that. And I'm like, I'm saying we can't put that in the audit report. And he goes, I know. So he'll be often putting an appendix on of just, this is how you should present your designs. And like, it's not going to be a safety issue, but it just makes for a better project and a better design if it's all presented nicely. So feel free to do those sort of things. What does annoy me, and I don't like to see, is an audit report, say for an intersection, and it comes in and it's got 1,000 issues. No, okay, 1,000 is excessive. But it's got 95 issues, of which 3 are actually substantially going to cause death and serious injury. And the others are just like very tiny, minor little bits and pieces. And I think we're detracting from the big ones by doing that. Now, your risk rating might mean that those ones sit right at the top, and that's good. And you should order it that way just to make sure that the first things they see are the big ones. But just hundreds and hundreds of little tiny things. Now, if there's hundreds and hundreds of more substantial things, then put it in. Any other questions, Kathy? That's good. These are good questions. People are really getting into it. And obviously, a fair bit of experience in this group with being involved with audits in one way or another. So that's good.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so I've seen design stage audits where the audit team wants to expand the scope. how clearly should the client specify the scope, and how tightly should the audit team stick to the scope?
Yeah, so the audit team is not there to redesign the project. They are there to highlight these issues. And this is where I'm often very principles based with my recommendations in order to not cause these sorts of issues, because there is a scope for a project usually, and it's fairly set, and we want to just be talking about the principles we're trying to achieve, and maybe some assistance on how that could be achieved, but it's up to the designer and the project manager to make that judgment. If you've got a detailed design stage audit and you're suggesting instead of a roundabout, which they've done the detailed design for, they should have a set of traffic signals, you have fundamentally changed the scope of that project. And at detailed design stage, it's really not likely to happen. So you need to play a little bit of judgment there. If you've got that at feasibility stage, though, that is where the changes should be happening and those decisions should be being made. And that's where the auditor would be far more influential in getting fundamental changes to happen, and should be putting that down there. Now, I say that in one sense, that's a more pragmatic way of going about it. You know, if you've got safety concerns, it shouldn't stop you suggesting alterations to the project, but you just do have to balance that out a bit. Yeah, it's probably not the clearest answer on that, because I don't think there is absolute clarity in that, and it takes a little bit of judgment.
We'll do two more questions, Ken. We'll go hopefully an easy one. Accessibility audits. So for mobility impaired pedestrians, should they be done separately or incorporated into road safety audit? And we're seeing some, or most road safety audits I've seen have included accessibility issues.
Yeah. So in theory and across the world, accessibility audits are a separate exercise to road safety auditing. Okay, sometimes they overlap, but as in the lack of accessibility creates a safety issue which is of a magnitude enough that warrants inclusion in the road safety audit report. But a lot of accessibility issues are not risky enough to make a road safety audit report, and are often not associated with road safety, but are associated with access and ability. So those are really, really important things for our community, and we've got to ensure that we do those. But in a road safety audit theory sense, they sit in another complete report. However, and here's the big however, in New Zealand, there doesn't seem to be a very rigorous and established process for accessibility audits, as there are in some other jurisdictions. And as a result, it's sort of expected that the road safety auditor is going to pick up on a lot of those things as well. Again, I would personally do that as an appendix or the like, because unless they are the issue that you go, yep, okay, if we don't get this bit right, in the next few years, we think somebody will be killed or seriously injured. But the thing is that, like, take tactile ground surface indicators, for example. You go and fix every single location in New Zealand to get the tactile ground surface indicators absolutely correct, installed everywhere, okay? I don't know if you're going to save any pedestrian lives across New Zealand over the next 5 years, maybe one or two, but you will improve certainly people's ability with vision impairment to get out, to walk, to cross the road. So it's an important access thing. There's a little bit of a safety element to it, but it's in the scheme of things, it's very low. Now, people get angry at me. oh no, it's a bloody safety issue. I go, I'm not, like, all I'm saying is that reviewing all of your crash data associated with pedestrians, it's very hard to find any that are associated with a vision impaired person, not being able to find a tactile object like that. It's hard to sometimes work that out, but just be aware of what are our actual causes of death and serious injury. Extremely important thing for accessibility, for inclusivity, and what we want out of our transport network, but just be aware of where we're putting things.
Okay.
I hope that makes sense.
Yes, it does. Very challenging. Okay, last question for this round. I've seen cases where auditors list a series of concerns at a particular location that aren't related to each other, which then bumps up the likelihood of the concern, as there are so many, which affects the score. Is that not the done thing?
So that's for the safe system assessment scoring component, to get the score up and all of these likelihood things. Yeah. So you're starting to get into a bit more detail around how to do a safe system assessment scoring matrix than we have time to cover in this particular course. But the matrix should be used in a safe system audit as a fairly high level, broad brush indication of where your alignment with safe system principles exists. And if you are concerned about that sort of stuff, really it would be breaking up your project into different areas to try to combat that. I can do a very extreme example where you've got an intersection down the road there and it's got a likelihood, you've got an intersection with a different likelihood over here. You don't really combine those likelihoods for one score. They're two separate entities, and we would theoretically have a matrix for each if they're substantially different. So it gets into a bit of the safe system assessment scoring nuances, which we can have a chat offline about, or we can do in a safe system assessment course. Good questions. Can we talk about pedestrians, Kathy?
Yes, you can now. Thank you, Ken.
Okay. So what we have to do with these courses is cover off all of our different road users, just to identify some of the requirements of these road users for safe travel. So pedestrians, what we're talking about now, point at some technical information regarding infrastructure and pedestrian safety, common road safety audit issues for pedestrians, and basic understanding of treatment and terminology. And so we'll do that for cyclists, motorcyclists, pedestrians. Obviously, we've been dealing with sort of passenger vehicles throughout, and they integrate in, and heavy vehicles sort of get covered off in our next session, which we'll jump into next time. Okay, 4 groups of pedestrians at greatest risk. Now, elderly, young, disabled, and intoxicated. And I just talked about sort of vision impaired and those sort of things. That is at an individual level, certainly there is an increased risk. Elderly, same thing. Young, the same thing. But intoxicated is just far and away the biggest risk road user. When you're talking about pedestrian categorisation in New Zealand, staggering amount of intoxicated pedestrians being killed and seriously injured. And we have to start, taking responsibility for that as well. So you can get annoyed and you can say, well, it's, they're intoxicated. Well, we need to say, what can our infrastructure do to start to be more forgiving of this? That's sort of a bit of safe system fundamentals. It's obviously a behaviour that we're not wanting on our road network, but there's so much of it that happens, and the result is so catastrophic that we need to intervene. When if somebody has a train derailment or the like, and it's an intoxicated driver, they blame the driver, but they also go, well, how did our system absolutely fail to let this driver out there, to not have systems in place to stop the crash before, all of these sort of things. Anyway, a little bit of a tangent there. Okay, the strategies are, we can segregate, as in completely different areas for pedestrians to passenger vehicles and trucks and the like. We can separate in time or space, or we can integrate. We can share a space. So segregation is quite well understood. We've got our motorways. Pedestrians shouldn't be on there, although we do see a reasonable amount of death and serious injury on motorways for pedestrians. It's often people getting out of taxis late at night. That my crash analysis on motorways it always amazes me, the amount of late night taxi exiting, death and serious injury for people, just doing all sorts of, again, intoxicated style things, throwing up, or anyway. So that's something we still need to absolutely be thinking about. But we can also create those absolute pedestrian areas. Prize for where this is. Yes, remember that. Just to make sure people are still with me. Yeah, there we go. Queenstown it is. So that's obviously segregation there for pedestrians. So separation in time and space is just simply utilising a bit of road at one time for pedestrians, at one time for vehicles, like pedestrian crossing. But obviously we've got to think about that when the timing doesn't work for one reason or another. One fails in their duty. And thinking about different ways that we can use that time and space. So what's that type of crossing called? Yes, it is a Barnes dance. Gee, New Zealanders are good at that, aren't they, Kathy?
Where the dance was named, wasn't it?
Yeah.
With the Barnes.
It was Barnes and New Zealander.
I know it was Henry Barnes, and I feel like yes, it was. But yes, Scramble's the other way. Other thing it's known. And Sean is commenting, whereas the Sharrow is the opposite of segregation. Yes.
Yeah, it's a good point.
I've got a feeling
to that, I suppose.
Sean's not a fan of a Sharrow, and he might have heard my Sharrow rants before. Sorry about that. I'll tune out again.
So give the prize to whoever said Barnes dance first. Separation. So this is where separation in space is where we've got footpaths, and they're in the road reserve or refuge islands or these sort of things. Here's another little interesting one. So a Danish offset crossing, a Z crossing, and I think somebody actually might have this as an assignment, and so they're going to get a little bit of help here. You get the pedestrian to walk into the refuge and then walk along the refuge, but make them all look at oncoming traffic. So you walk on there, and there you're looking at that car cross, and vice versa. You cross that way and you look at the car, you can see it. But this way, you'd walk up and your back would be at cars. And it's funny, like for a railway level crossing, pedestrian crossing, next time you do it, actively look at how they have made you look up both ways on the track. They will make you like, nobody will be able to articulate this to you, but you'll walk up to it and you will look both ways down the track, because they will Z you in before you go in. And yeah, it's a nice one. Now, again, like we've got some other fundamental issues we want to deal with, the speed of these vehicles and approach to crossing and the like. But those are the kind of things that you sometimes pick up as an auditor, amongst other things. and the width of the crossing, refuges, and the like. And there's some debate about this diagram out of part 15 there of your guidance about is it right? Is it big enough? Is it all sorts of different things? But nonetheless, the easy rule of thumb for an auditor, because we're not absolutely caring about standards and guidelines, is it big enough? Is it wide enough for a father or a mother pushing a pram to be in there without having to stand themselves in live traffic or put their baby in live traffic? Or maybe a bicycle, is it wide enough for a bicycle? There's a good thing to think. Or you know, a mobility scooter or the like, is it good enough width there? Another separation in space is that pedestrian grade separation. And all I want to say on this is just be aware that this is not necessarily your ultimate solution for pedestrians, because they just won't use it. So some pedestrians might use it and you can get some benefit there, but just be aware that a lot of people, just because it's there doesn't mean they use it. If there's an easier way across the road, a lot of people will use it. And I talked about intoxicated, and certainly intoxicated are far less likely to be using some sort of convoluted ramping system like that, as opposed to just walking across the road. And integration, so shared zones and the like. So it's one way I like to think about shared zones. It's actually based off some design guidance around shared zone design. It's a fairly simple sort of principle to follow. I'll let anybody type in if they can think of the principle. So if you're creating a shared zone, what makes a good shared zone? What is the principle you're sort of trying to achieve? Let's see if anybody's got any ideas.
Thanks, Ken. Linda's also asking a question. Is there a standard for minimum width, Australian standard or New Zealand standard? Is this for shared zones, Linda, or was it?
No, for refuge islands.
Yeah.
I think each jurisdiction has their own little differences. I'll check that though. That's a good point.
Some of the commentary that's coming in about shared zones, though, is that it's a low-speed environment, safety of pedestrians comes first, hierarchy of mobility, low speed for all modes, no obvious priority to any one road user type, ambiguity, low-speed environment, amenities for different groups, low risk of harm, low speed, no priority markings, high place function, low movement function.
Gee, these are all good things. I kind of want to either give everybody a prize or nobody a prize. Maybe the no obvious priority in one road user ambiguity style things, because it's really to make it not look like a road. And so that's kind of that ambiguity. Like that is, if it looks like a road, you fail. And a really good way is if you drive a good shared zone, you're going, am I even allowed to drive here? That's where you're absolutely in. And I think this one in Hamilton is actually quite a good one, because it really gives that feel. Am I allowed to be driving through here? It's very different. It does not look like a road. Okay, let's get into some specific findings, pedestrian safety findings. And as I say, I'm just giving examples, some things that commonly come up. There is just huge amounts of stuff out there. Okay, so sight distance on the approach to pedestrian crossing. And that is something industry is a little unclear on, but people should be clear on it. If pedestrian has priority, as they do in this case, the stopping sight distance should be achieved for the vehicle to pedestrian, and for the vehicle approach sight distance to the crossing itself. Now, slip lanes are particularly problematic because where is the driver looking? Well, the driver's looking out to their right to see if they can put the foot down and go. And so we do have that pedestrian coming onto a pedestrian crossing and the driver not looking at the direction that they're traveling, and that whole scenario plays out poorly. And that's a good principle to think about as an auditor is, where are drivers looking and where are risks coming from? So we have many options to alleviate that. Everything from removal of the slip lane to raising of the crossing, signalisation of the crossing, and reconfiguration, opening up sight lines, all sorts of things can improve. Yeah. Thinking about the swept path of larger vehicles over pedestrian areas, we know that large vehicles track, and if the geometry of the intersection or the layout of the intersection is insufficient to accommodate a large vehicle and you have pedestrians storing in a location waiting to cross the road, a large vehicle can turn and the driver will feel they've done their turning job appropriately, and the back end of their truck will track and run over the pedestrians. And unfortunately, we do see this. We see deaths of pedestrians. There was one in Melbourne not so long ago, and the intersection was not that old, and just could not accommodate the swept path of a larger vehicle. And there was nothing there to stop that tracking running over, where pedestrians were just standing, waiting to cross the road, looking at their phones and waiting, and they were killed. So that's an important thing to just ensure. And in the next session, we'll talk a bit about swept path analysis and what we do as auditors to check some of that. Also thinking about what's not there. So if you do have areas that are going to get changes, are there footpaths? Are we going to make pedestrians walk on the road? Or are pedestrians currently walking on the road? Think about it in conditions, if it's muddy, if it's wet, if people are pushing a pram, if they're on a mobility device, well, they're going to have to be on the road there. So we can also suggest those sort of things. So for this sort of thing, it's going to be a challenge for this person. Hang on, have we got a gap in our roundabouts line? Yeah, we do. It's in the right spot. This person, if it was muddy and that's their trip to and from home or wherever it is, they're really going to be walking on the road, and we're going to crest, and there's some issues. So there's a term we use a lot as road safety auditors and safe system auditors when we're thinking about pedestrians, and it's the term desire line. I'm sure some of you use it a lot already, but pedestrians' desire line is just that straight line from where they are to where they want to be, or where you've got a lot of pedestrians, they are, and where they want to be. That's the pedestrian desire line. And pedestrians are not good at deviating off their desire line, and in fact, you can design stuff, and it's just going to mean that they continue to try to achieve their desire line. Here's a little example where you've got the desire line. Out here is a railway station. There's a big some shopping centre there. The desire line goes across like that. And you can see that this girl's saying, well, I'm going to walk on the road on the wrong side of this pedestrian fence until I get to that little gap, rather than going there and coming back. And I have a particular dislike for pedestrian fences for this reason, amongst others. It also just absolutely degrades your livability of a place as you start to try to corral pedestrians like sheep around areas. The thing is, though, that the addition of pedestrian fences in a lot of locations can increase risk for some road users because of this. They'll just walk the other side of it, jump it, trip over it as they're jumping, all sorts of troubles like that. So try to address your issues on the road network before jumping to a pedestrian fence and thinking that solves your issues. There are 2 locations around the road network I do like pedestrian fences, but they're not for corralling pedestrians, they're for containing pedestrians, which is slightly different. One of them is outside pubs or bars or nightclubs, so any drinking establishment or the like, and that's because of I've done 2 coronial inquests, inquiry reports into deaths associated with patrons coming out of drinking establishments, fighting, and straight onto the road. And a pedestrian fence would just contain, and that seems to be occurring a decent amount of people falling or fighting or for some reason coming out in that quick manner. And it's the same around schools and school gates. They're not intoxicated, they're just skylarking and playing around and chasing each other, chasing a ball, whatever it is, and then so again, that's a sort of containment device as a fence rather than trying to corral. Very sparingly then around public transport stops and a few other things can work. So there's another way to describe pedestrian desire line, user experience versus design. So we've got to think about that. This one Kathy took to show it, pedestrian desire line back there. As I say, pedestrians will go where they need to go. We don't see a lot of this in New Zealand anymore, complete segregation of the community. So maybe there's the residential on one side, all of the commercial on another side of a major high-speed road without pedestrian connectivity. But at these early stages of audit, you want to be thinking about that sort of stuff. Okay, another investigation into an incident that we're going to try and learn the principles of. This was what a driver was. This is what the driver sees. And the next photo I'm going to show is right behind this hazard board here. That's what the pedestrian sees. So who technically has right of way here? Who's got the priority, the vehicle or the pedestrian? Yep, the vehicle. So technically the vehicle does. And it's funny, it's somebody's popped in there, courtesy crossing. It's that idea that this is a good spot and everybody should be slowing down and being courteous. I don't like courtesy crossings. I like being clear with who's got priority. If you're going to go for a courtesy crossing style thing, you can make a full shared zone out of it, or just make it a pedestrian crossing. So yeah, that one, the confusion, like you watch this for a while, the pedestrians, some of them wait and the cars speed through, and sometimes the pedestrians just walk out and the cars stop. And obviously one time that just all didn't work. The pedestrian just walked out and the car sped through because, yeah. So I like absolute just clarity of priority. This one again, like, be a little bit confusing as to, is it a pedestrian crossing? Is it not? It's not, but it's got some characteristics like that. And so again, it would just be nice to make that a formalized pedestrian crossing. If you're not going to have pedestrian crossings, there are ways to do raised threshold treatments that don't confuse. I think that's fairly clear that the roads through there and the pedestrians should be very alert and not have priority. That's not a bad one. Airports are a big source of all sorts of road safety audit course content because of one reason or another. But, you know, it's very confusing here as you step off a plane as to who's got priority. It kind of looks like you're walking out there as a pedestrian, but occasionally cars come through here And yeah, technically they have priority. I mean, the raised platform's going to help out a huge amount in this, but it could have been very clear and very obvious. And again, yeah, that courtesy crossing, as mentioned, I don't particularly like it. Just formalise it as a pedestrian crossing. We want vehicles slowing down and stopping for pedestrians. Just formalise it. Formalise it like that. And then again, we'll pick up lots of little issues. This one, post-opening, looking at pedestrian crossings in Hobart, Tasmania here. And the sign installer, for some reason, thought that the pedestrian leg signs, which are used in Australia for pedestrian crossings, should point to the pedestrian so they know where to cross rather than the vehicles, to show them it's a pedestrian crossing. So that's how they were installed. So again, post-opening stuff. Okay, here's one. Now I want you to imagine you received this as a design. So they haven't built this pedestrian crossing yet. Don't worry about the other markings on the road. They're trying to sort of activate their street a little bit. But just in terms of the infrastructure and the furniture and things around this pedestrian crossing with the curve out stands, what do you think could be done? A small tweak in the design to make this safer. Now, I know some of you are going to say raise the crossing, and I agree, like that'd be lovely. But let's not go with raised crossing. What sort of tweaks in the design stage could be done to improve safety for pedestrians here? Oh yeah, Australia doesn't use hold lines. No, New Zealand does on the approach to a crossing. Oh yeah, so again, this is an Australian one, so the signs and things are a little bit different. So I think I'm going to go there with Kathy again. You're going to need your help here. People are talking about the bin and changing where that bin sort of is and the like. And that's what I've got a little bit of concern with. If a vehicle's coming up from this side, you got a pedestrian coming out here, they've put all of this stuff here right on the approach side. If that, like at design stage, could have all just been put on departure side, it just improves everything. Opens up sight lines, as long as you're making sure parking doesn't, creep right up to there. But it's a very small tweak. Open up sight lines for shorter pedestrians in wheelchairs, and the like. It would make really no difference. Other good ideas in there as well. I really liked. So I'll keep moving on because I want to get you to do an exercise shortly. I'll keep talking about some other case studies of investigations we've done. And again, I'll remind you, I'm talking to you about individual crashes to give you context and understanding around risk on the network. So hopefully when you're looking at a design, you can use those principles. Road safety audits are not crash investigations, but we learn a lot from them. So this is a site of a fatality of a pedestrian who stepped out here and was struck by a vehicle going there and killed. And you can see there, it's got a signalised crossing across a major road, and this is a slip lane. I'll show you a little bit. Here is the slip lane. This is what the driver sort of sees. And that other photo was taken about there, facing that way. And if I step back a little bit, you can see that it's a high-speed road, 70km/h road, fairly shallow angle entry into the service road. And the driver has come in there and moving a reasonably high speed. We predicted somewhere around the 50 km/h mark when they went through here and struck the pedestrian who sort of just stepped out. And it's really interesting to try to unpack this. And when you stand there, and the photos really don't do this justice, and you've got a green man there and a green man there and this thing ticking away, and it's a very attractive draw to step out into that. It's almost like a little pedestrian see-through effect there where you're looking at that and yeah, so it just takes that 1 in a million occurrence of somebody just stepping out there and yeah, so there's a number of things that can be done here. We could try to reduce this entry speed. You could do threshold treatments here to try to slow that speed of entry. But then I think a lot of people are starting to pop it into the chat and starting to think about, why don't we try to at least provide pedestrian priority or connectivity across here? Like that would, you don't want to have pedestrian priority there and then it stops immediately for a little bit and then it's just, a disconnection there. So yeah, that one got changed and you can see it now is a raised pedestrian crossing. We wish that was done at design stage when that intersection was first being proposed or the service lane was being built. That would have been a long time ago in this case. But when we're looking at new designs, we don't want to build this danger in. And ideally, we'd like to rectify these before people are killed or seriously injured and address some of these risks. And the Disability Discrimination Act or accessibility audits, as we talked about earlier, just be clear with your client on what you're doing. I say DDA. DDA is an actual act in Australia. New Zealand doesn't have a particular act that must be followed in terms of accessibility and the like, but there's a lot of good information and good knowledge out there for people, to be able to make those judgments. But I always am very clear with clients to say to them, in Australia, I say, this is not a DDA audit, or in New Zealand, I say, this is not an accessibility audit. I want to be clear with you on that. I'm happy to provide some commentary on things we pick up, but we are not going to be measuring the height of handrails. We're not going to be looking at building access and, braille on public transport stops. That's not part of what we're doing. So if you want that stuff done, get somebody else to do it, or we can add that to the scope if you've got that knowledge and the like. Okay, so what I'm going to get you to do here is sort of use a little bit of that knowledge and that thinking that we've been talking about there. And I've given you a few examples. It's time for you to unpack and have a good thinking about this intersection. And I'm going to let me explain the scenario, and I'm going to give you some options, and then I'm going to get you to vote on it. I think we've got a poll that will come up in a bit. Don't pop it up yet, Kathy. I'm going to talk this through. So this is obviously an existing intersection, but again, I want you to, well, auditors, hopefully we'd be seeing this at design stage and we'd be pointing things out. But this existing intersection, we have one location that's had 6 pedestrian crashes, and they've all been the same crash type. And it's had some highly severe injuries to 3 of those pedestrians in 3 separate incidents. Exactly the same crash type, plus the others, which have been more minor, but exactly the same crash type. There's been some other crashes at this intersection, but there's one particular crash. Now, again, remember, there's going to be a poll that comes up, so don't write anything into the chat. But I'm going to give you some options here of exactly what that crash is. Okay? So your options are: 1, there where a vehicle turns over a pedestrian. Pedestrians are the dotted lines. That's in crash diagrams. Our convention is pedestrians dotted lines, pedestrian walking that way. Number 2, vehicle turning onto pedestrian crossing the road at the signalised crossing there. Number 3, a pedestrian crossing from the island over the slip lane. Don't pop it into the chat. You're going to get a poll that comes up. And 4, from the other island into the roadside there. And 5 is turning through a keep clear into a crossover and striking pedestrian on the footpath. So, Kathy, hopefully our poll pops up. Otherwise, we will revert to the old thing. Now, you can grab the poll box and move it around if you need to look back at the screen, and we'll let people have a bit of time to have a think about that. And Kathy, have I missed any questions that have come in? Or any pertinent comments?
Ken, yes, I think, oh, you did get a few bless yous earlier on too, which I didn't pass on. But we're all relieved though that and I'm sure you're relieved too. And now a question that came through earlier, which right at the beginning, which I missed. Can a safe system assessment be separated from the safe system audit in New Zealand for the purpose of assessing options at the start of a project?
Yes. Yes, it can. So the safe system audit in its totality is the preference of where people are going. But at the early stages of a project, the more important part is thinking about the fundamentals of the project. And as you go further down, you're going to get into more details. And the safe system assessment component is really helpful in those early stages and loses its value down the track, in my opinion. So yes, you could just start with that safe system assessment component. Now you can kind of do that in, yes, the answer is yes, you can do that. It will aid your project. Just be aware though, if Waka Qatar here is funding you and they've required you to do a safe system audit for a project, you may just have to go through the full exercise anyway.
Okay, we've almost got everyone who has responded to that poll. And I think I might look to close it down now and share that with everyone. Because we're split. Location 1 and location 2 seems to be the majority that people have chosen.
Yeah, so every one of those locations I popped in as an option because they all hold some level of risk, and for one reason or another. 1 and 2 do have some very interesting, weird characteristics. But the answer is 2. So well done, anybody who said 2. So why is 2 just like directly causing us so many serious injuries occurring? Well, the reason for that, I think Will's explained it very well. The driver is looking out to their right, as we talked about in slip lanes. And the crossing is on the left of the slip lane. Now this is irregular. Crossing should go to there and then there for exactly this reason. Because if you're out there on site, actually what you notice is there's a particular time where the driver is looking out there, the cars have all stopped because they've got a red light, but that's also the time that the green man is going for the pedestrian. So the pedestrian is walking out, the driver's looking out there, and the turnover happens there. So what we have to do is so I should say, like, one is not great, but the driver isn't looking out there to make this turn. And they're probably, maybe going a little slower just on the angle of it. They've got all of this sort of, Anyway, our challenge is to try to identify this sort of stuff before it's ever built as ordinance. And that can be pretty confronting. And this is a real sort of world example of where getting it wrong costs people lives and serious injuries. And our role is to identify this. But don't get too overly concerned you're going to miss this sort of stuff, because it's a process you go through. Again, you're going to be in a team and you're going to have an experienced auditor with you who's going to help you sort of be able to identify these things quite quickly. But what I do as an auditor, when I'm looking at a plan, I would say, okay, I'm driving up here and I want to turn right. And I'll be saying, like, I'd be imagining this. I go, I wonder what I can see here. Okay, can I see my signals? And I look at the signal plan and I go, okay, they got a mast arm there. What if there's another vehicle? What if there's a truck in here? Would I be able to see it, still see a signal? And then I'd be saying, okay, is it clear where I go? If I want to turn right, is there a clear right turn area? Yep, good, that's all good, I can see that. I go, okay, I'm doing my right turn. Can I get around there? Are there going to be pedestrians crossing here? So I'm thinking about all of this for a right turn. And then I go, get in here. Is it clear where I go? Will there be other vehicles? Are these vehicles going to come out? Go, maybe I go too fast. Where do I go? Am I going to run off the road here? What's the camber? I do a little bit of the, there's some geometrics of intersections in terms of your cross falls and your turn angles. Might have a look at that. That's all just for the right turn for a vehicle, because then I'd go, okay, I want to go straight now in the vehicle. Same thing, is it clear back here where I go? Do the lanes line up? Am I getting it straight through? Am I going to be confused? Am I going to go into here? No, that looks all pretty clear, straight. I'm okay with that. And you do this not only for all the vehicles doing all of their movements, but you do it for all of the bikes coming up here, pedestrians crossing at different locations. And so you'll eventually get to, okay, I'm driving up here, I'm doing a left turn. Okay, I'm coming around here. Is it clear where I go? Yep. Or is it, maybe it's not. Do I go in here to do my left turn, or do I go here? Okay, a bit of confusion already there. And I think some of you are already picking that up. And then you go, okay, I'm looking now here. Okay, I'm looking right. Yep, looking right. Okay, and I'm going, oh, hang on. Why am I turning onto a pedestrian crossing? That's a bit odd. How's that going to play out? And that's where you start to then hone in on that. Say, what's going on there? So there you go. Again, another one. Unfortunately, had to have all of that trauma to our community and people whose lives they're destroyed, really, their lives in now, but it's been altered, and we can see there that it's been configured at least into a way that lessens that particular risk. There's still some risk out there, that's for sure, but that one has been lessened. And that should not have ever made it through a design stage, but there would have been something. It would have been a service, or it would have been a cost, or it would have been some reason why that it went down that track, and nobody had that eye to really pick that out. So looking at different crossings and the like, you want to try to go out to an area during times like school, if you've got schools in the area, see how it operates, see where the parents are dropping off kids and parking and causing all sorts of different challenges from that perspective, how many kids are using the crossing, how that's all operating. Same with, to the rugby ground, try and see it during a home game and people exiting and entering if you can. Practically, you might not be able to do that, but it's good to get that understanding. Then we've got lots of crossing facilities you could be recommending, thinking about at different signalised crossings or other crossings. We've seen a few of them, but somebody went on a bird theme at one point in pedestrian crossing terminology. Puffin crossing is a pedestrian user-friendly intelligent crossing. So that's this little thing, which is like when you walk up to your house at night and the light goes on. Same technology, it just keeps the light red for cars until there's no movement on the crossing. So you're thinking about that if you've got slower moving pedestrians. In some areas, they've got toucan crossings, which is adding a pedestrian and a cyclist to the there, so people can ride their bike across legally. Toucan cross. Again, I mean, I don't think it's a major, that's actually its name. I'm not making these things up, but I don't think there's a huge road safety issue here. If that was just a pedestrian crossing, people would still just ride over it anyway. Pelican crossings are pedestrian light control crossing. So a driver sees a red light, then a flashing orange for a while, just to give them time to for any stragglers to move off the crossing, but still make the drivers alert. This is like this one, UK's funniest road sign or something like that, and it makes complete sense to me. But Pegasus crossings, there are certainly Pegasus crossings out there around the place. Actually, I'm interested to know whether New Zealand has any Pegasus crossings. But that is, yeah, because technically a horse is a vehicle and it needs its own road rule regulation to be able to cross at that. Hey, Kathy, did you know it is illegal to ride a horse in the public road network when you are intoxicated? Because that's drink driving, technically.
That makes sense. Yes.
But it is not illegal to ride an intoxicated horse.
Boom, boom, Ken. Love the dad jokes. So you're promoting that we intoxicate our horses. Is that right?
No, the horse that would be illegal too. I think
okay.
the horse has to have a few drinks off its own back.
Fair enough. I wonder, thinking about the bird themes, like budgie crossings, eagle crossings, like there's
a hawk crossing in the US.
Good. Okay, but in all seriousness, I think I was supposed to follow up your gag with a Chardonnay joke, but I didn't quite get there. Anne-Marie has posted that she recommends checking out the Waka Pedestrian Network Guidance for New Zealand PED Planning and Design, and popped a link in there. Thank you, Anne-Marie.
Yeah, and that is good. Thank you, Anne-Marie, because I'm just trying to talk about principles really, and then each jurisdiction has their own nuances, and you should be able to audit really in any jurisdiction around the world by taking the principles that we've been talking about, accessing their specific design guidelines and the like, and combining all of that and doing a good job. And the other thing you've got is available is the Austra's Guide to Road Safety Part 6, which is on screen there. Has things at the end which are prompt lists, and what they are is a series of questions to help you think about those principles we've been talking about. And there is a section on cyclists and pedestrians, and it just asks you lots and lots of questions which might prompt ideas of risks at the scenario you're looking at. Lots of them you'll go, well, that's irrelevant, or not applicable, but some of them might just spark an idea. So they're a good thing to use. Okay, Kathy, I think that's nearly time. Is there anything else that you need to talk to the people about? Are they finishing off assignments. That's due shortly. I'm going to be marking those this weekend, am I?
Maybe just about. I think we might be giving people a little bit of time to get those in. So maybe Monday evening you could do that. But a few people have already got them in. So thank you very much for that. I will pop the, there's more. I'll pop that NZ guidance into the learning management system as well. And we just want to recap module 1 research assignment. Could I please get to know what we all could do? I missed it. Okay, so I'll do a very quick get a bit bigger here, share of the screen. So the module 1, for those who missed it, is you've been assigned a topic at random. Here is the list here, and you would have received an email as well. So there's your topic and who's been assigned what. And whoopsies, not there. Oh. Hold on. Sorry, I've missed it. I've gone there, gone everywhere. How about I stop sharing my screen for a minute? What you need to do is create a short, like a 1-page flyer, a short PowerPoint presentation. You could do a video, you could do an audio podcast. What I was actually going to show people is if you do jump onto Ken Beer's LinkedIn, a few months ago, 7 months ago, he was in Christchurch and he did a bit of a report, a 1-minute 48 report on a race platform. So that also gives you a bit of an idea of the sort of thing that we're looking for here. We don't want you to spend too much time on it. And if you can't find any information about it or you're not sure what the topic is, please get in touch and let us know. Hopefully that's covered it for people. Are you laughing at me, Ken, or with me?
Yeah, bit of both.
Bit of column A, bit of column B. Fair enough. Okay. And that's due, I think, next Monday it was, if I could find my screen, but I can't. Any examples? Yes. So there's the example of Ken on LinkedIn, and there's also an example video from one of our engineers. But what I can do is maybe send you an example. We have also got some examples on our Safe System Solutions LinkedIn page, because on occasion we have posted some interesting ones on there. So what I'll do is send them through after this session.
Thanks, Kathy. Okay, bye, everybody.
Everyone. Bye.